volunteers.
Yeah, and volunteers aren't gonna Uber people around typically.
No, there's a couple people that put out a thread and said, geez,
Town of
just-
Waldboro might be him.
well,
That's us, and
Yeah, I'm here.
and Jen joined just now.
Good job.
Hey, Jen.
Look at that.
So
all right.
Nice.
Didn't think he'd make it, right?
he was
Oh,
iffy
Max
on
is pretty
his
resourceful.
his ability to attend. So let's just call the meeting to order. I think we have a quorum with at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can kind of move pretty swiftly through these items because a lot of the things that we're talking about are sort of subcommittee projects that we're working on. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Anything else?
If Jan's not here, she's the one who's doing that subcommittee. I suggest we just table that to the next meeting.
Which one?
About the website.
The
And-
website. So,
yeah.
well,
Here's my-
if anybody wants to add comments in person to the website stuff, I can also email Anne. So we see no citizens. We have the minutes from December and January. And I hope everyone got a chance to look that stuff over. If there are items
I
you
did.
wanted to.
I'd make a move to
check.
accept them if everyone's moved to accept the minutes.
Which one are we doing first? There's 2 sets, right?
Oh,
December?
December.
December? So you
Sure.
move to, I'll second that.
That's fine.
Okay.
What do we vote?
Vote?
All in
Yeah.
favor?
All in favor?
Has Jen got her hand up?
Jen?
Yes,
Good?
yes,
Okay.
all right.
And to accept the minutes for January. Is there a motion to accept the minutes? To approve the minutes?
Same, do the same?
Yep,
I'll second.
move.
Vote? Accepted.
Good job, good job.
The chair report item, I just wanted to bring up one point, which is a point that had come up in the past, I know, and in passing, but the notion of having sort of rotating guests in this committee. Jen, I want to ask you, in the next couple months, would it be feasible to ask in a formal way the Waldoboro Business Association to come to the committee and just be a guest and talk about collaboration or just kind of share information?
Yeah, I think it would need to be organized.
Okay.
You'd have to decide what is it that you want to know, so people can come prepared, but also, who do you want, how many people? We have a board of 9, we have 4 officers, we have a treasurer, secretary, president, and vice president, so exactly what do you want?
Okay. On that notion, and this is, Julie had mentioned this to me in passing too. I'm curious to know from you all, does that make sense? What kind of question would we want to ask the Waldoboro Business Association, especially in light of these website updates? Does that make sense? Who would we want to see here? Any
Yeah, I
thoughts
mean,
about that?
that seems like a great idea to me. In terms of, what we'd want to ask, I think it would be, it might be interesting to get the WBA's perspective on some of the things that we want to add
Mhm.
and see from their point of view, does it make sense to do that?
What's
Because they're
useful?
businesses that have come into Waldoboro, so, they're the kind of folks we're trying to attract with the changes we're gonna make.
Yeah.
You're talking specifically, Jan, about the website, the
Yeah,
new
yeah.
page on the website? Yep.
Yep,
We're launching our new website in February, so.
is there gonna be some cross-pollination?
I don't know, we have a link to the town's website. I don't know what you mean for pollination, what kind?
Well, like we're gonna, well, we're not there yet, but it sounds like we're going to try and make it accessible for folks who want to start a new business in Waldoboro to get
Yeah.
information.
So we have links on we have a page called, I can't remember, if we called it So You Want to Do Business in Waldeboro or something like that.
Mhm.
We have links to the town website, to the planning board area of the website, to the ordinances, to the comprehensive plan, things like that.
Right. Okay, so this is something that I can maybe think and email with a couple of folks about, but at some point, maybe it would be a good idea for us to come up with a formal request for to the board of the Waldeboro Business Association, just to come in and maybe do a little talk, just to make sure that we're not crossing signals and that we're all kind of in alignment. At some
I wouldn't
point.
phrase it that way. What they would think would improve business opportunities in
I
Waldeboro.
was
They
gonna
would be
say-
in the best position to know that.
Right.
More like getting in sync with the Waldeboro Business Association.
That our committee should be in sync with the WBA.
And vice versa.
So just so you guys know, the reports, the verbal reports I get from people now are that the planning board, it seems to be much more interested in and much more positive when businesses go in front of them, and that they feel that Waldeboro is definitely a business-friendly town now.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't always the case in years past, but
Right.
it seems to, people seem to feel that.
That's a good thing. That's a good piece of information to have. Okay, so town updates. Max is not present, so we can't do that right now. As far as in the old business section, website updates. A few people have made comments. Rebecca's made a couple comments. I made a couple comments. Have you all had a chance to look at it, at her draft for the website, and what do you think? How does it read?
Well, it's a lot of information.
Okay.
And I would think you'd want it, it's like it's mentioning existing businesses, and it's saying links to all these different organizations, which I think is a little too much. You know, it's too busy, it should be compact, short, and sweet,
Okay.
who to contact. And then they were saying, contact Max for more information, which, you know, he's already overburdened, so.
Right.
And stuff, so it's like, I would think an outline, if you're gonna open a business, what are the fees? What is this? What kind of planning permission? What are our zones, like a link to what the zoning map is, type thing. I got a copy of this so I could review all that and learn that stuff. I've been doing my homework. But I would think it needs to be tailored. We might need to decide what kind of businesses we want to attract and tailor it to that. Because you can't, if it's all over the place, you got a hodgepodge, you know, we need to be more organized, I think, and target with limited resources.
This is Max.
Oh, okay.
Coming into the meeting here.
I don't know, that's what I think. Oh, that's your phone.
Sorry.
No, it's her phone.
I thought I
Oh.
turned it down, actually.
Welcome.
Oh, sorry I was late.
Oh, you're good.
It's okay. We're just starting to talk about the website. Jen has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Sonia, the reason why it's so broad is that, a business decides if they wanna go into a community. It's not, we can't like say, oh, we have enough of those businesses, we don't want you, we want you to go elsewhere. We want that kind of business, right? That just doesn't go over well.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying,
Oh.
what they see up front is what we want to attract, but you don't have to say, don't come here. And that
No,
other
but I'm just saying
information
that-
can
that-
be following.
Yeah, there's been, anyway, but the
Should
reason
be-
why the ordinances are broad, the chart of uses that goes with the zoning areas is broad, but narrowed, you know, it goes down. It is it's so that people can find where they fit in the zoning plan, you know, where their type of industry or type of business fits. But, and it is complex, you're absolutely right. And the ordinance book alone is quite big, but it is, it's gonna be interesting. And so I have a meeting set up with Ann too to talk to her. I sent her some comments, and I think it's gonna take a little bit of time to fine tune it, make it easy to take in, and help people find their way. You know,
Sure.
it's a big thing when a business wants to, depending on the type of business, right? It's a big move, depending on the type of business. A home business, it's much easier to start. There's all kinds of little things about it.
To your
So, yeah, go ahead.
To your point, Sonia, I think it's true that it should be kind of punchy and very direct and say, here's a resource, here's what you need to know. You know, it can be it might need some pruning, it might need some tailoring, but I think it's a great start what she came up with. I think the tone is pretty.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
So I do have one thought, and that is, there was a couple of examples of, kind of success stories.
Yeah.
The Ugami, not saying that right, but the eel
The
farm.
eel farm, yeah, yeah.
And,
Tsunami, yeah.
and obviously we've got a number of other really great examples in town. I was at another, so this is just off topic just a little bit, but I was at another board meeting today for the Madomic Exchange, and we were talking about our vision and where we want to be. And one of the things that we talked about was, a story is so much better than a bunch of words.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can actually tell a story about how someone came to Waldoboro and made a successful business, that's really powerful. And that's way more powerful than a link to a website.
Yeah.
So I think we gotta be careful that we don't, that we kind of take advantage of the examples that we have that have been success stories, and maybe somehow, and I don't know if that, maybe it's a link, maybe it's have the owner do a little video
Sure.
about how it happened. But we've got enough successful businesses now that we could do that.
Get a little showcase of, quick little interviews that people can
Right.
click on and
And-
have.
And that's what, that's.
And that was Ann's suggestion that we approach Sarah McNeil about doing a short video
Perfect.
on behalf
Right.
of the Community Development Block Grant, which Odd Alewives received in a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So Odd Alewives would be a great one. The Eel Farm would be a great one. The little cafe in Waldoboro now is just
Perch.
booming, and it's just a lovely spot. Narrows is great. The Barber, George's
Shelley's Flowers
business.
and Gifts, guys, she's been there, I can't tell you how many years and won many, many awards.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think that would be
I think
very
we have to be
powerful to do
careful.
that.
Well, there's
Not to
movies and
forget
movies.
about all the people who've been here for many, many years. That's successful as well, not just the new guys.
Sticking around, the persistence of
Right.
making this community
I
work.
wouldn't think just downtown either, because there's businesses spread
Oh,
out all
absolutely.
over the place.
100%.
Like, there's Bullwinkle's, Moody's, then there's the Moose Crossing
Great
Garden
example.
Center.
Terrific.
Well, they're
business.
super expensive. So I don't
But they're
go there.
stuff
They're
is good.
successful.
I mean,
They're
Yeah.
incredibly.
It might be
successful.
expensive, but it's really good.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean, Jen, what I was saying about even the Waldoboro Business Association could do this, where there's just these little vignettes that people, if they want to see what other businesses are in town,
Yeah.
they could click on it and get the story.
And
Yeah.
that's where, I'm going to call on Max in a second, but that's where we want to make sure that we're in sync with the Waldoboro Business Association to
Right.
make sure that we're not doing the same thing in different words. That maybe it's more the WBA to do, profiles of
Well,
businesses.
just keep in mind
Not
that,
everybody's a member.
we don't have any paid staff, everybody's doing everything volunteer, and we're all, overloaded.
Okay.
So we have to be careful about how this all plays out.
Max.
Thank you. I was just going to say, when naming off the businesses, I think it'd just be fine to have at least maybe one example for whatever category we're looking at. Like, we're trying to promote the Community Development Block Grant. then obviously audio wise, because that's really the only one we have an example. But yeah, having a business that's located in the downtown, having one of the businesses that we've had for ages in the town would also be great to have. Someone that's in North Waldoboro, you know, something that showing that we do have a diverse selection of businesses rather than picking everyone in the downtown would be a pretty good idea for promoting Waldoboro. That's all I had to say.
Great.
Yep.
So that's some great feedback on this first draft, and just want to thank Anne, because I know she's going to watch this later, for putting all that time into generating this very important piece of the website.
I guess I did have one question on that, and she's not here, so Anne, when you hear this, is one of the intents to actually list the businesses in town somewhere on the website? Like
Right.
if you have to drill down to get to it, but here's a list of active businesses in Waldoboro.
I wonder if that is literally what the WBA should be doing, rather than the town
No, we
website.
do it for our members who
Do-
pay,
yeah, see,
right? It's
not
a paid
everybody's a member.
organization.
Right.
So if you want to join the WBA and pay for the annual fee, you get all of these listings on the website as well as on the map and guide. We have to be careful of that too. Our job is to promote our members.
I guess
So we just list everybody.
I guess I kind of I can see a situation where if we have an up-to-date list of all the businesses in Waldoboro on the town website, then it's sort of like a competing directory, and it's taking pressure off of people to become members of the WBA, so there might be a conflict of interest situation.
Yeah,
So
but we
the
don't,
other thing, Conrad, is that we used to, many, many years ago, when I moved to town, there was a list, but the town could not keep that list updated. There
Right.
wasn't enough staff time in the town because people's lives change, their contact changes, phones change, businesses go in and out of business, and they stopped doing it because they couldn't keep an up-to-date list.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was just thinking like Chamber of Commerce. I realize we're not that big a community, but there are communities where the Chamber of Commerce does that.
Right.
They will list.
They do it for their members too, Patty, because their members pay a hefty fee for that.
Okay,
Okay, so basically, it's we're gonna do some more work on the information we want to put on the website. We want to make sure that we're in sync with the Waldoboro Business Association, and if we do a showcase of businesses, that make sure there's a diverse selection there. So the next point in old business is ADU discussion, ADU incentives. Last meeting we talked about what a tax rebate ordinance could possibly look like. And now we should maybe get into just a discussion about incentives broadly, different types of housing, and I want to add to the ordinance idea that having heard feedback from different folks and having conversations with Max and Julie, maybe the next step, what we could recommend in April is just a housing study. So it's something we can do in the next few months to show what currently exists in Waldoboro, how many ADUs there are, how many other types of housing units there are in Waldoboro, to see what we've got and see what we really need specifically before we jump ahead to, you know, what are we incentivizing here?
Have you been driving around the town?
Sure.
I've gone down, there's places where there's, like I went down, let's see, I've been up Washington Road, Union Road, and I even hit Wagner Bridge or Depot Street. That was very interesting. And then the saddest one I saw was down there. It's not on the Bremen Road, but it's you're going to Dutch Neck, but Gross Neck. There was a lot of poor people, huge community of poor people down in there. And from what I understand, it's kind of, they're all related. But I've never seen trailers where the stuffing's hanging out of the bottom and stuff. But then there's mixed, and you go all through that, and you end up at that llama farm at the end of the point and stuff. But, you know, but if you're going up Depot Road, I saw some sites, but it's kind of a mixed bag, and it looks like there's one where someone built a small house, but I don't see any sign of people adding stuff or building anything. And a lot of these people, I doubt they'd have access to any kind of funding to create. You know, and I was looking at, if you look at the map, look at how the properties are lined up. They're these long, elongated properties. and stuff. And I suspect a lot of these, if you look up, they're subdividing the houses for family members. That's usually kind of what it is
Right.
and stuff. And
Historically for ADUs, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was kind of calculating what cost would be, a minimum cost, like, I was looking at the minimum size they'll allow is 190 square feet, which is basically 47 feet by 47 feet. And I was looking, if you break it down, but what we have, I'd asked Max for, like, some of the lot sizes and what density was, and I found out Waldoboro's a growth area. So they allow for 2.5 times the density versus, so like where they'd say two units would be allowed, 4 units would be allowed type thing, but that's only in the category of affordable housing. So it doesn't really, and then most of downtown Waldoboro is a historic district.
Right.
So, like I was saying.
Zoning wise, you mean?
Yeah, zoning wise, right? So, but if you're writing the ordinance out, you have to be careful about, let's see, I was making notes. Okay, let's see. You have to be, I think, on the structure, like height, maximum size, like from the complaint ones I've got, they're mostly coming out of California, but I did see some in Chicago.
Okay.
They're putting 4-story buildings within 5 feet of someone's house that they paid $400,000 for. And they're looking at cement bricks.
The San Diego story you were talking about.
Yeah, that one, that's 6 inches from the guy's lot, his yard. They've eliminated the setbacks in San Diego.
Right.
So, and they're allowing them to sell the accessory dwelling units now. Governor Newsom signed a letter for that. I would not follow California's example. I think they're sinking fast. They have a huge budget deficit. But, so I was by looking at that, so you'd have to be the size of the structure, the height determined. Do you want them to be 2 stories? What are the buildings like in Waldoboro? They're 2 stories. Either they're older or they're 1-story 4x4s, as they call them, or the Cape Codders. You know, you might want to have.
You're talking about existing housing, not.
Yeah,
new.
yeah, I haven't seen any existing, the only thing I saw that would look like, it's up on Depot Road, and that's one thing where I'd see where it's a quote-unquote an economical accessory dwelling unit, it has rudimentary porch, it's about,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's nice, but I
There's
thought
some-
if you're gonna do it, you know,
Cape
do you want it to fit in the neighborhood? And
That,
stuff like that.
Now,
That study, though, that Lincoln County did,
So,
has some of that inventory you're asking about.
Yeah, it's,
They inventoried the entire county
yeah, for the
what there is for
towns,
housing
yeah.
units.
so
Right.
part
So I
of,
think that data exists, and
So-
Genesis Fund.
sorry,
Okay, so that's a point about the existing stock. Sonia, to your point about what can people build as an ADU or any structure, whatever you build has to comply with the zoning that exists. So you can't build anything in Waldoboro over, I think it's usually 42 feet is the max
Okay.
height. So whatever you build, if it's an ADU or it's a primary residence, it still falls under all the normal restrictions of building. Jen, you have a point, and then I'll call on Jen.
so we're the Economic Development Committee. And so our concern really isn't housing for low-income individuals. So I want to be careful that our conversation,
Or subsidized housing.
right, stays on track, that what we're talking about is housing for employees.
Yes.
And so I just want to make that distinction, that we're not veering off somewhere we don't want to veer off.
It's a great point. Jen,
No, I'm just trying to
Right.
visualize.
sure.
Doing my
Workforce
due
housing
diligence.
workforce housing and missing middle housing is what they're calling it, all across the country. So, you don't wanna, so it's great to try to find out if anybody's doing any, or plans to do any, ADUs once that passes. I think, Max, maybe you can explain to us, I think our deadline for having and we already have our ordinances in place, but the state's deadlines for having ordinances in place is July 1st. And I'm imagining at that point, maybe there'll be more guidance, or towns might come up with more guidance about what is acceptable in their town, for an ADU. But there is, as Patty said, there's lots and lots of data. That's a very huge study that was done municipality by municipality in Lincoln County, and they also have a new study that they've done where they've looked at areas in the county that are good sites for potentially larger housing developments. So that study, I'm not sure if that study's released yet, but it should be any minute. So there's a lot more information coming around. Also, I know that the Mid-Coast Council of Governments has done some pulled data together for the 4 counties. So there's an awful lot of data coming out. There'll be plenty, I think, to look at first, and then there's time to look at how this is all gonna play out, the policy and the procedure and processing
Right.
of it.
Max, from your point of view, do we know how many ADUs exist in Waldoboro? That was a point that was raised previously. And if not, what do we need to do to find that number?
I don't think we have max.
That's the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. But I don't know.
That's where Max is.
That's where Max is. He was around. Oh, he's on mute. He's trying to unmute.
I'm here, sorry.
Did you hear that question?
No, can you repeat it?
Do we now know how many units of how many accessory dwelling units exist in Waldoboro? And if not, how do we find that number?
I believe I asked Daryl that very question, and he just started to laugh at me.
Okay, so that's no.
Oh, that's not a comforting answer.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything to add.
Okay, I have a question, and Max might be able to help. Are we crossing over and stepping on planning board toes here on anything that we're discussing?
No, encouraging ADUs or some type of thing wouldn't be a planning board item unless you were talking about how permitting is done. And even then, that's something I just report back to the planning board about.
Okay, thanks. And do we, I think you said we started to have some guidance for people who might be interested in creating an additional, living space in their property or in their house, expanding it. Do we have guidance for people that's written up in a way to help them, or is it incorporated into the ordinances?
I mean, at least for an accessory apartment or dwelling unit, that's always really been permitted in town, and it's just a building permit more than anything for what the interested
But
person
then in
has.
terms of size,
We've never had size limits or size restraints.
before, do we now? Did you mention that we had some now?
Because of LD 2003, we are going to have, I'd have to look back to see what it was. I think it's going to be a 900 square foot limit.
And that's not voted on yet?
Well, that's 190 square feet.
That's the
That
minimum.
hasn't,
Yeah, that's the minimum. The maximum, yes, I think is 900.
yeah, that's going to be voted on in June. But even if it's beyond on that, our ordinance allows duplexes to be counted the same as a single family. So as long as the 2 units are connected as one, it's still going to be the same thing pretty much.
Okay, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So are there a lot of ordinances that we're gonna be voting on in June that are about this?
I guess it depends on how the town wants to break it up. Usually usually ordinance changes to the land use ordinance, we just do one vote on, do you wish to adopt the changes to the Waldoboro land use ordinance?
Thanks.
Yeah, but it could be broken up by article or section, depending on how people want to do it.
Okay. Now, regarding an incentive, I mean, we understand that there's a dire need for specifically workforce housing, people trying to find a place to live in order to work in the area. So back to this point, I guess I just want to put this to the group. Based on that kind of example text that I produced last meeting, how would you all feel about an ordinance, a pilot project like this? And what are the downsides? What are the traps that we'd have to avoid? Does it create the impression that you're just rewarding the well-off rather than creating new opportunities for people who are trying to build wealth, for instance? I want to open that to the group.
My only thoughts on incentive is how do we do it so that if people are bringing in ADUs for workforce housing, that we know it's going to be long-term workforce housing and not used for Airbnb or something. I should reword that, short-term rentals.
Right. I mean, I think the
If you're
short.
gonna get an incentive to do this, then, and are there limits on it? And I know that varies based on different communities have done it different ways.
Right. Max.
Mac?
Yeah, I think Patty was gonna pretty much address or was already asking what I was going to ask. But I think of, with LD 2003 on the affordable housing project item, you do have, anyone who's going to get the benefits has to put in a covenant and has to actually show that they will only be doing it for people of a certain income or 30 years. They have to enter in that covenant agreement and register it with the Lincoln County Registry of Deeds for Waldeboro. And I believe the Maine Housing Authority has a similar incentive program, but I think for single-family dwelling units.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting that type of language in there would be what we want to look for. Some type of agreement for you get reimbursed if it's going to stay that way for the year. But yeah, once the grant money's up, it's a matter of what we do once the grant money actually runs out. Other than that, I think we just need to make sure I think a good idea, and I think this was in a draft you sent me, Conrad. I think it was the Colorado ADUs.
Yeah.
About like actually outlining the goals for how many units should be created and everything. I think that's a good starting point, just because it outlines what the goal is and sort of planning out the incentives early on. But that's my initial thoughts.
I'm going to put this in the folder for the group, but this is something that I found recently. The city of Durango, Colorado, actually created ADUs for locals rebate program. And it's really specific, and it gives you this flow chart about how you create an application, how it's reviewed, how you get your permit, and how your rebate is issued. It's like very, very specific. And it's brand new. Well, not brand. I mean, it's from the last year and a half, last 2 years. So this is a really great reference for us to kind of look at and consider.
So is it driven at low income, or is it, how do they?
So like they have a set budget. They say there's $64,000 in funds available in 2024 for this rebate program, and they're trying to create 10 new ADU units. And it's a first-come, first-served basis. The first 10 eligible ADU units get the money. The rebate is a flat dollar amount of $8,000 for newly constructed or legalized units. And the criteria are the owner must rent an ADU to a local who works at least 32 hours a week for a business or organization in the county. And there's a form that you have to turn in with the lease. The lease has to be a minimum of 6 months. So I'll put this in the
I
folder
like
for you all
that,
to
that's
review.
terrific. That's exactly what we're talking
Along
about.
the lines of what we're thinking.
Yeah.
Where's that money coming from for the rebate, though?
It says
Is it federal or state? You know, and it's taxpayer
Municipal, it
money.
is municipal.
this is
Probably.
municipal. It's
So
money that
it's
the
other property
city.
owners will have to pay that into the local municipality.
Well, you could argue that if they're supporting the creation of new businesses, it's weight taken off of their property taxes, because property taxes are being paid by new businesses rather than by those existing residents. That's the argument that the municipality would make.
Yeah, I'd have to like see the logistics on that, so yeah.
In other words, like if
Well, because
Waldeboro-
75% of the property taxes go to school costs. The remaining 25% stays for the town budget. So you'd be talking about increasing the town budget by X amount of dollars, and it'd probably have to take a town vote
Not
for X
necessarily.
amount of dollars.
Well, it'd be a town vote for sure. I think, Max, you're thinking of using TIF dollars for this?
TIF dollars would probably be an eligible expense that could be used if a pilot project happened. And yeah, that would be using some of the savings we get from select parcels in town, that if those would have been savings that would have gone to losses and subsidies, so it's, yeah.
So we actually we actually protect some of our property taxes with the TIF from being siphoned off either to the state or the school. Is that correct, Max?
Yeah, it's sheltered, so, if the property is up $100,000 in value,
Right.
and it's a $10,000 tax bill, we'll say, 75% of it would have gone to the schools or to the county or to the state because of different formulas and subsidies that we would have lost, and we would have only got the $2,500 that Sonia's talking about. But
Right.
now, because of the TIF, we get the full 10,000. So we have the 2,500 that still goes to the general fund, but then there's that extra 7,500 that we get to keep and can go towards these types of projects.
Right. It's specifically to be used for economic growth or things that help the community to grow.
Right. So I can see the point that using the TIF, even if it's, by the way, a nominal rebate, it doesn't have to be $7,000 for construction. It could be more of an honorarium, in other words, just to make the point and see if there's interest. But there's a very direct economic case to be made, saying somebody is using their mother-in-law suite to support someone who's working at the eel factory or someone who's working at the roadside deli or whatever. And that's direct benefit to the town. So I can see the case for it.
So the other thing, Conrad, that you have to factor in is the level of the rent charged. And I think once, Sonia, you had said you saw that program on Maine Housing that was offering a grant or something to people who would build, but that they had to agree for so many years to charge a under market rent. And that's the only way for people who work at roadside or the eel place or whatever to be able to afford a rent, because the rents have gone through the roof. So that's another thing to take into account and think about.
Yeah. Make sure the rent is actually affordable. So anyways, all this into account. Wait, did you have something to add to this, by the way?
No, just that, the other angle to this is that, whoever's building the accessory unit is increasing the value of their property.
True.
And their taxes, unless we do a tax deferral, but their taxes will go up.
Yeah.
And that's income to the town. So it really is a win-win.
Oh, yeah,
And
from the
and
town's
if you,
point of view.
and if, let's say we can get 10 of these things built,
Mm-hmm.
and we get, 10 employees that could live here in Waldoboro now, that couldn't, that's businesses that could stay open.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe we have to address the rental case, but I want to be careful that it's a rental for workers, kind of like how that's written,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't become low-income housing,
Okay.
because that defeats what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. We're trying to mobilize economic development.
Right.
Rather than, okay. So as far as I can tell, it's worth exploring this idea, at least recommending it to the select board, and seeing what they think. Is there anything that you want to add to that, Max? Like, what might the timeline of this look like? Is this something that we could potentially recommend in April, or should we wait until we have more information about the existing housing stock in Waldoboro? We can find some of those numbers from these studies mentioned before.
I personally will need to probably talk to Julie. She was, for those who weren't at the Sylvania meeting, Julie was sick today, so I haven't had a good chance to talk to her.
Okay.
My first instinct is that it might be, it might not be ready for June for a vote.
Sure.
But that's always me in a worst case scenario mindset, because I'm thinking one thing people may want to see is like a draft process for how this would be done as well. Because I think there's just going to be so many questions on how are you going to make sure this is done and that's done. I think that comes from the ordinance, but I think there's just going to be some questions around it, and it might be something that would just need to be refined very well, because I can see how this might get some people a bit concerned with what's being done.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a discussion to have, and I don't know, 2 months before the deadline might be a bit of a short time, but that's just my thought.
So in the meantime, it's something in our biannual report on April 1st, we can at least talk about different approaches to incentivize workforce housing, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
And we should look at, what exists. Yeah, I understand the concern that writing an ordinance like this makes it look like the town is picking winners and losers and rewarding people who have means to build and not rewarding those who are struggling.
And it might make it harder for them, because if there's no prohibition on this, what's to stop a developer from buying the house and land just for the land and tearing down the building, and then they can put 4 units instead of 2 units along with the existing house? That's my concern. I looked at it, so it makes the land more valuable, and it makes it harder, because I know a lot of people who have just bought land. They buy that land unit and they build their own house on it if they want that property. And that's the people doing, because they can't afford the starting cost of the house, which is now at about $200,000 for, stuff. I was lucky I got my house when I did. I got it for
I
about,
guess I got lost on that. You mean a developer could put up 4 ADU units? But if we still have ordinances that address that, it'll still be workforce
well, it
housing,
says, well, you
right?
can't make them more restrictive than what's in this LD 2000. So they said if the building is torn down, it's considered a vacant lot. And a vacant lot allows for 4 ADUs or 4 units. And then but it has to be within the minimum lot size.
Right, but we're talking
If
about
I can-
ordinances, right?
Yeah, if I could jump in on that, because I know what Sonia's talking about. So it's 2 different things that you're going back and forth on. So accessory apartments, it is only limited to 1 per lot. But what Sonia's talking about is a different thing that LD 2003 does, where, because some towns had zoning laws that said you can only build 1 single-family dwelling unit on your lot, and that's it, even if you have a 200-acre lot. So the state put in this provision for LD 2003 that pretty much said if it's in a growth area and it's vacant, you can build 4 dwelling units total, as long as you have the minimum lot size and you have sewer or septic and water that can handle it. So, for Waldoboro, on a 5,000 square foot minimum for the village, that means I could build 4 units in a vacant lot as long as I have at least 20,000 square feet.
Which was about half an acre. I was figuring that out, the
Sure.
acres, yeah. And
But I wouldn't see that as a
So-
problem. I see that as a good thing.
Yeah.
well,
but-
it's gonna push real estate up. It'll increase property
Where would you
values.
say that?
But I
Well,
think, if I can just finish my thought, I'm sorry.
sorry, go ahead,
Um,
Max.
Yeah, no, it's all right. That's one of the things with Zoom, I think that's actually a bit of an outdated thing that I was going to try and, that I was asking the state to see if I don't have to include that, because Waldoboro's already been allowing multiple units to be on a lot. Like, people could build 4 units in the rural district if they wanted to, as long as they had 8 acres worth of land. So this seemed a bit more restrictive than what we were already doing. So I was actually going to ask to take that away, because, yeah, that would be encouraging demolishing some older structures just to build 4 units. So I was actually going to be looking at removing that section in particular, if that solves this whole thing.
Does that make sense, Sonia?
Yeah, it does, because while I was looking at the zoning, what it would be affecting,
Yeah.
Waldeboro has a historic district, and Waldeboro downtown proper, you were saying doesn't have a minimum lot size, is that correct?
In the historic
Correct.
village.
Okay, yeah, and then there's the village area, which is this little blue section in here.
Yep.
So it's, which is same, so that would be the area most effective, okay? But a lot of this, I don't know how far the water and sewer goes, but as long as they make sure there's adequate water and septic, they can do what they want,
You're saying this could
okay?
potentially incentivize people to tear down existing buildings?
Yeah, on some of these, yeah,
Right.
but it's like, it depends on the population, but, they can't afford increases in property taxes as it is. Think of how many people signed up for that tax rebate or the tax holding thing that they've now I said, it took you guys were backed up in the town trying to process all those applications. I know some people who don't have an extra penny, they're on fixed incomes.
Sure.
But, so I'm missing something here.
me too.
So I'm missing something. So if somebody has enough land to build 4 houses, but there's currently an old farmhouse, say, and he tears that old farmhouse down and builds 4 new houses,
Yep, you can do that.
but that's terrific, isn't it? What's the problem with
Yeah.
that?
Well, so the whole
I'm
context
missing
of
something.
LD 2003, and that one particular, is that, if it was an empty lot and you could build 4 units, you're right, that's terrific. If you can take an old decrepit house that's in the downtown, one that's unsavable, and you can tear it down to build 4 units, that's great.
Right.
But what the law at a minimum says is if by July 1st of 2024, whenever we enact this, if there is a unit already on there, then I can only build 2 additional units. And that doesn't matter if it's in a growth area. And if I have 2 units already on that property before July 1st, 2024, I can't have any more units built on that property.
Even if you
So-
demolish them?
Even if you demolish them, that's what the state has as a minimum. The demolition item is something the towns can opt into. So if I wanted to follow the state minimum guidelines for LD 2003, and if someone has 2 dwelling units in the downtown, in the growth area, that means they're not allowed to build any more dwelling units on that property, which is pretty which makes them then wonder, well, you're telling me if my lot was empty, I could have built 2 more units?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, LD 2003 is a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I understand the argument that it's making is there's more pressure on this lot in a really dense area than the zoning permits, and so they're trying to create a provision that say next to think of like on Route 1, like next to Subway, like one of those like single buildings that are there,
Right.
I mean, maybe that's not a good example, but I can see the rationale that like, oh, if you tear this down, then you can put the proper density responding to the area, But that, in our case, in Waldeboro, might just be irrelevant and in fact counterproductive. And
But that's, I think what I was thinking too, Jan, is, so don't we want more
Right.
housing for workforce housing?
So that's 4 houses
So there's
providing
4 instead of
taxable
1.
income to the
Right.
town versus 1. That seems
So
But
that's
the
the part I'm
question
not
is-
getting. Why
Right,
that's
the
an issue.
question, the question we're talking about is, now that means the house is no longer valuable, it's the land that's gonna be valuable. And especially with, the historic village is protected because if you have to tear something down, you can only build something that fits the aesthetic of that area.
right.
But
That's the zoning.
the downtown and the village surrounding the historic village doesn't have that provision. So, Jan, I'm going to use your house because I think you're just outside the historic village. If you decide to sell that property, it's considered 1 unit. So, I'm only allowed to build 2 more units on there under LD 2003.
But I've got a,
Meanwhile,
so would you consider
Okay.
the empty lot, how would that be considered?
If you
an
tore
empty
your
lot
house
would
down.
mean I could build 4
I have an
units on
empty
there.
lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was that,
But-
Max?
You could do
What?
4, he
I
said.
could build on that empty lot, right?
You can do a
Right,
4
you
plus.
could build 4 units on that lot.
Yeah.
But if that lot you have somehow had 2 dwelling units on there
Right.
before July 1st, you couldn't build any more dwelling units on it at all.
Right, okay.
Okay, I'm not
So
building
that's why
them.
that's why I'm saying LD 2003 is a very interesting when it comes to this because it wants to promote multiple housing units, and you're saying great, you can build 4 units, that's ideal.
Yeah.
But it's actually more restrictive than what we used to have, which was just if you meet the minimum lot size, build as many units as you want, and you don't have to demolish a building or anything like that.
So we are not opting in.
No, I've checked with the attorneys in DECD, and they're pretty much agreeing. As long as you can recognize that, as long as they meet the minimum lot size and have access to sufficient septic and water, you don't have to include this language.
Okay, great. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Sonia, and allowing us to have that discussion. So,
LD 2003 is a mess.
all right, so I don't want to take too much of people's time, so let's just wrap this housing discussion up for now. We don't have Ruben here to talk about the broadband estimate. So a new business, I just want to talk briefly about LD 1156. This is something that Bob brought to the attention of the Sylvania Committee as well. This is a measure which could be approved in the Maine state legislature this year to establish a Maine Trails bond. And there's an info sheet here, and there's an info sheet in the Dropbox. And if this bond were established, then Waldoboro could apply for funding to help build trails or improve existing trails in the Waldoboro area. So it could be a potential source of funding to work on Sylvania trails or a kind of a Riverwalk project or any number of things that Waldoboro would want to do, including the mountain bike trail up to the quarry, for instance. So I guess have a look at this, but I would almost even just move to recommend that the select board endorse this, because a lot of municipalities in Maine have officially endorsed this trails bond bill. Sonia's shaking her head.
I won't vote for that, no. I said that it's the nonprofit. You can ask the people who raised the funds to turn it into a park before they sold the land to for the elderly housing. They were gonna rehab and turn it into a park, and they'd raised a significant amount of money to pay for that. They might be interested in funding that instead of taking taxpayer money.
So you don't think it's proper for any taxpayer dollars in the state of Maine
No.
to go to
We
trails
don't-
maintenance?
People are having a hard time. We don't have money. Why are we committing to extra money to be taken? The state should be reducing the sales tax, because they're making out like a bandit
Well, I would
on
say
that
it's-
sales tax
that's a
due
big
to the
reason.
inflation.
That's a big reason why people come to the state of Maine, is to take advantage of
Yeah, but
recreational
we have an
opportunities.
excess of that already. We already have a Waldoboro town forest. We already have a lot of stuff. There's a snowmobile trail, a motorized trail for snowmobiles.
And my problem with the existing system is that none of these trails are connected, and I would like to see, in accordance with the Downtown Revitalization Master Plan of 2011, 2012, that these trails be linked up so that we can get from one to the other.
We'll
And
just
that
try to
takes-
see if we find someone who wants to pay the money for that, you know?
If I can-
Everybody's getting too dependent on the government.
Go ahead, Max.
I was just gonna say, it seems like you two are gonna be echoing back and forth your opinions on it.
No, I'm actually done now.
I-
I voiced my opinion, so I'm done.
Go ahead.
No, okay, fine. Then. I was just saying, yeah, never mind that.
Well, all I wanted to say was I would like to recommend that the select board endorse this. That is my position.
I would agree with that, yeah.
So maybe in the April, in our April package or biannual kind of report to the select board, I would move to include this, endorsing this trails bond. It seems like a good idea to me. Sonia is not in favor of this. But that's all. It's something that we can revisit too.
Hey, Max, did we ever revisit buying that corner property that kind of separates the town landing from Main Street? Did that ever come up again?
It's come up in conversations from time to time. One of the problems is that the town was going to use the Land Water Conservation Fund grants to help purchase the property, and we're no longer in good standing until we have an equally valuable piece of property to have the Land Water Conservation Covenant that the tennis courts originally had. We need to have that first before we can access the grant funding again, so we're likely unable to get that property anytime soon.
Okay. All right, so I tabled this, but I will probably push to include this in our biannual report to recommend that the town of Waldeboro endorse this trails bond measure. Are there any other comments from the committee today? Okay, good. I move to adjourn.
Second?
Okay.
I'm in favor.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Can I, Max, hope you feel better?
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sick. I just had a different meeting.
Oh, it just sound like you.
Okay, so I just hit end, and then Marcus showed me the stop button on the audio, and then I'll just close the laptop.